It was the icon of the U.S. Navy in the Vietnam War, a revolutionary design in boat manufacturing that brought speed, agility, and firepower to the heart of jungle waterways. They patrolled the brown waters of Mekong, facing ambushes and other unseen threats, all while reshaping naval warfare as we know it. This is the story of Patrol Boat Riverine, the master of the Mekong Delta. When the United States entered the conflict in Vietnam, it brought an advantage to the South Vietnamese side. The U.S. forces were one of the two largest forces in the world, while its navy was undeniably unmatched. Its 7th Fleet, the main naval force engaged in combat operations with more than 70 large vessels, including aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, amphibious assault ships, and others, was one of the largest and most powerful fleets in the world at that time. However, even such a formidable force had its weak sides. With their mighty ships, the Americans were masters of the deep seas, but this was not where the war was waged. The real fight was taking place deeper inside Vietnam, in the delta of the Mekong River, which was firmly held by the insurgents. Mekong Delta was probably the key strategic area in the war inflicted in Vietnam. Spanning over 15,000 square miles, it housed more than half the South Vietnamese population and was the largest agricultural hub that provided food for the rest of the country. As such, it was the center of the attention of the Viet Cong, who used it to supply their forces with both food and manpower necessary for the successful conduction of the war. Over time, the VC became the masters of the Delta as the South Vietnamese army had no way to control the area, which had only one hard surface road. In contrast, it had more than 5,000 miles of navigable waters. This vast waterway system allowed the Viet Cong and their massive fleet of 50,000 junks and sampans to move virtually unopposed, transporting men and supplies less than 100 miles from the South Vietnamese capital. Even when the United States entered the war, the VC continued to move freely because the Navy had no appropriate vessels to navigate the shallow waters of Mekong, which at some points were no deeper than just a few feet. To make things worse, the Navy had no experience in riverine combat. The last time its unit saw combat on a river was on the Mississippi during the Civil War. To gain control over the Delta, the Navy needed to acquire new boats. Fortunately, the solution to their problem already existed. It was a design already being used by hundreds of recreational yachtsmen across the United States. In 1960, the Hatteras Yacht Company from New Bern, North Carolina presented a revolutionary design in the boat industry. A 41-foot fishing boat Nitwits with a hull made of fiberglass. Fiberglass was an innovative composite material made from fine strands of glass fibers that were woven together and often embedded in a resin. Although it was introduced in the 30s, it found its way to civilian use only after World War II. Fiberglass was both strong and lightweight, with a wide range of uses due to its unique properties, such as high durability, resistance to heat and corrosion, and the ability to be molded into different shapes. Most importantly, it allowed for a cheap, fast, and massive production of products. It was no wonder that the guys from the Hatteras decided to use it to make boats. When in the spring of 1965, the Navy made a request for a 30-foot patrol boat, Hatteras President Willis Slane proposed a 28-foot boat with a fiberglass hull. The design was suitable for quick mass production and, more importantly, for the challenging environment of the Mekong Delta. In order to be operable in the shallow waters, Slane proposed the boat be powered by water jet pumps. Impressed with Slane's prototype, the Navy decided to go with a fiberglass boat. They ordered 120 boats to be built in less than 6 months. They required that the boat achieve speeds between 25 and 30 knots and draw just 9 inches of water during the cruise. It also had to be large enough to accommodate the crew of 4 with an arsenal of weapons including a twin 50 caliber machine gun and an armored turret and an extra 30 caliber gun. The result was the patrol boat Riverine Mark I, a 31-foot fiberglass hull boat powered by twin 180-horsepower Detroit diesel 6-volt 53N engines and two 14YJ water pump jet drives manufactured by the Jacuzzi Brothers, the very same company that became famous for making hot tubs. The fully loaded boat weighed 14,600 pounds and could reach a max speed of 25.7 knots. The cost of the boat was $75,000, more than $500,000 in today's money. As mentioned, the Mark I's hull was made of fiberglass and filled with styrofoam. The design provided a strong corrosion-resistant structure capable of withstanding the challenges faced by patrol boats, all while being corrosive-resistant. The lightweight hull offered another unexpected advantage, which sailors discovered after the boat's baptism of fires. RPG rocket warheads often failed to detonate on the hull. Without a solid target, the warheads would simply pass through the boat without exploding. Although slower than the prototype, Mark I was still a way faster boat than any junk or sampan. However, to increase the speed, soldiers often stripped their boats of engine covers and other unessential equipment. Some even made alterations to engine governors to increase the engine rotations and overhaul the boat speed to 30 knots. A unique jet propulsion system attached to the engine provided the boat with extraordinary maneuvering possibilities. Mark I could easily run over a sandbar without damaging the propulsion system. It had a very short stopping distance and could turn 180 degrees in its own length. None of these features would be possible if the boat was equipped with standard propellers. The typical weapon arrangement of Mark I included a twin M2HB 50 caliber machine gun turret forward, a single rear-mounted M2HB, one or two M60 7.62mm light machine guns on the port and starboard, and an MK19 40mm automatic grenade launcher. There were modifications with more 50 caliber 81mm mortars and other types of weapons. In addition, the four-man crew carried its own arsenal of personal weapons. The only protection installed on the boat was the ceramic armor shielding for the twin 50 caliber machine gun turret and a quarter-inch thick steel armor plate at the coxswain's flat. This was because the designers aimed to make the boat as light as possible. Protection was not the priority, because the crew would rely on the boat's speed to get away from danger, rather than to sustain heavy fire. Mark I had its drawbacks as well. Although the fiberglass hull was resistant to environmental threats, it was easily damaged during contact with sampans and bullets. Bullet holes also allowed the water to seep inside the hull and slow the boat down. However, the most common issue was the clogged jet pump intakes. It was so frequent that the crew had to clean them at least twice per patrol. To address some of these issues, a new model, Mark II, was introduced in 1967. It was 6 inches longer with a more powerful diesel and had aluminum gunwales installed to protect the hull while searching enemy vessels. By the end of the war, the Navy purchased 750 boats of both versions. At the height of production, 2 PBRs were rolling off the assembly line every day. The majority of the acquired PBRs were deployed to the River Patrol Force, also known as Task Force 116. Formed on December 18, 1965 as a lead force of Operation Game Warden, Task Force 116 was assigned to conduct patrols along the main waterways in the Mekong Delta in order to interdict Viet Cong activities in the region. Patrol boat operations were supported by 1 repair ship and 4 landing ships. Air support was provided by a squadron of Bell UH-1B Iroquois helicopters, the Seawolves, and a squadron of Rockwell Bronco aircraft, the Black Ponies. The majority of operations included day and night patrols with the task of inspecting Vietnamese rivercraft, enforcing curfews, and setting up ambushes. Apart from these usual missions, PBRs were also engaged in deploying SEAL teams to undercover missions, laying minefields, and supporting troops in combat. The average PBR crew comprised only 4 men, a boat captain, an engineman, a gunner's mate, and a seaman. At first, only junior officers and chief petty officers served as captains. However, as the war went on, first and second petty officers also got the chance to lead. This was unique in the Navy, as enlisted sailors rarely held such high responsibility. The reality was that every crew member was capable of performing all tasks, from running the boat to handling weapons. This versatility made them feel like multi-skilled old-school sailors, and they viewed themselves as elite, partly because of the black berets they wore. The PBRs were engaged in long patrols, sometimes 18 hours long and sailing as far as 35 miles from their bases. They usually patrolled in pairs. Daytime duties involved checking boats for illegal goods and identifying their owners. During the inspection, one boat would close in on a junk or a sampan at an angle, allowing all weapons to aim at the target while they searched. The second PBR stood at a distance to provide cover from attacks. Searches were exclusively performed away from shore to avoid ambushes. PBRs were allowed to stop and inspect any boat they encountered. However, considering the dense traffic on the Delta, there was no way they could search every boat. Choices of which boats to inspect were made at random. If a boat ignored orders to stop, warning shots were allowed. The direct engagement was only permitted if the other boat shot first. These rules aimed to avoid upsetting local civilians, but they also meant that PBR crews often couldn't use their firepower effectively until it was perhaps too late. This approach allowed the enemy to choose the terms of engagement, leveling the field between the PBRs and the Viet Cong. The rules were clear. PBRs didn't join shore attacks or stray into smaller canals. If attacked from the shore, they were to retreat quickly and call for airstrikes or artillery support. These boats weren't built for direct combat with heavy enemy fire. However, there were instances when PBRs did engage in the firefight and spread havoc among the enemy. The most famous instance of this was the story of Petty Officer First Class James Williams and his patrol boat 105. Williams was leading a patrol with another boat when they came under a sudden attack from two enemy sampans. He quickly responded, firing back and destroying one sampan and forcing the other one to escape into a river inlet. Williams chased the fleeing sampan, but only to find himself amid a more intense combat. Enemy troops were waiting from hidden spots along the riverbank and opened fire at them with small arms. As they moved forward, pressed by enemy fire, Williams and his patrol encountered a large enemy group of 2 junks and 8 sampans, supported by heavy automatic weapons from the shore. Despite the danger, Williams remained in the open, directing his crew's gunfire and boosting their morale. Realizing they were outnumbered, Williams decided to move down the inlet and wait for backup from armed helicopters. However, he stumbled upon even more enemy boats nearby. Choosing not to wait for air support, Williams engaged the enemy, leading his patrol through heavy enemy fire. They managed to damage or destroy 50 enemy sampans and 7 junks. When helicopters arrived, the night was already falling. Williams knew that in the dark his boat stood easy targets, but still decided to enhance visibility by turning on the patrol boat's searchlights. He then moved his boats dangerously close to the shore and continued to press the enemy. Even with low ammunition, the patrol continued to engage the enemy on land and eventually overcame their resistance. Under Williams's command, the patrol destroyed 65 enemy boats and dealt heavy casualties to the enemy on the ground. For his exceptional leadership and bravery during the 3-hour battle, Petty Officer First Class James Williams was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was undoubtedly one of the greatest legends of the River Patrol Force. Task Force 116 continued to patrol the Mekong Delta until 1968, performing up to 70,000 patrol hours a month. During this time, the enemy activity in the Delta declined substantially. However, that same year, as part of the Vietnamization program, the Navy shifted all of its material to the South Vietnamese Navy, including the task force's patrol boats. By December 1970, the Task Force 116 had been dissolved. The legend of the PBRs continued to live through the stories of the men who had the honor to wear the black beret and navigate the perilous waters of the Mekong Delta. Thank you for watching this episode. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and share it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to see what's next. Stay tuned.